Jamahal Hill just did an interview. I want to back you guys up. First time I ever saw Jamahal Hill fight, COVID, pandemic, Apex, no audience. And I remember sitting in this chair, and I remember talking to you guys after the fight. I remember what I said, and I said, I can't imagine that I could like this guy anymore. And at that point with Jamahal Hill, I'm not talking about world champion. I'm not talking about household name. I'm not talking about a main event pay-per-view draw. I'm talking about a tall, skinny kid who apparently used to play basketball that's now doing some cage fighting, but he's got a little cool swagger to him. He's always got something kind of cool to say. He just looks like an interesting guy. He also looks a lot like a basketball player. And I only bring you this because now you all know who Jamahal Hill is, but you didn't then. My video, by example, it bombed. I put Jamahal Hill in the thumbnail. You guys didn't click on it because you didn't know who he was. I mean, he might have even been his debut. For sure was his debut on television. Now, make no mistake, Jamahal Hill is the most unpolished champion in the organization. Jamahal Hill is the most unpolished champion in the sport. Jamahal Hill is the most unpolished champion of the modern era. Are you ready for that? Now, does that sound like I just insulted him? Because I did not. At all. I used to do these on Tuivasa. I tell you guys how green he was. This guy's not a black belt anywhere. Tuivasa's knocking guys out. Got a big win over Derek Lewis, who was the #1 contender on multiple occasions. Tuivasa's out there just on heart, man. He was a modern-day Tank Abbott, just out there fighting. When I talked about he was a blue belt, that he was rough around the edges, it was meant as a compliment because that growing curve is so big. And fighters and athletes, you guys will know exactly what I mean. When you first get into something, ground that you can cover in a very short period of time, right? The ground that you will cover in your first 4 years, you could go another 14 years and you won't cover a quarter of that ground. So when I talk about a guy being raw, Tuivasa, just by example, not having a black belt anywhere, not even having a brown belt anywhere, but he's ranked #4 in the world. I am bragging about a guy. I am talking about, whoa, you've got potential exonified. He's already ranked #4. I say that same thing about Jamahal Hill. Now that's changing. That is changing rapidly. Jamahal Hill, whether he wants to give a thank you and credit or not, but owes a lot to Paul Craig. He really does. Jamahal has not been the same since that fight. And many guys in history, they will go down. You'll have something happen like that. You will be scared to death, right? Boxers, we see it all the time. When the guy gets knocked down, now he gets knocked down all the time. He's never been knocked down. He gets knocked out. Now he just gets knocked out all the time, right? We see this. It's the same thing for grappling. I mean, it's the same thing about having a attentiveness. It's the same thing about having flashbacks of yesterday. It's the same thing about having negative thoughts reinforced. But some guys use it as a springboard. It's rare. Jamahal Hill is one of those guys. He used it as a springboard. Jamahal Hill really does. If you follow his career, and he's to be fair, he owes a lot to that night. He owes a lot to that round. He owes a lot to the experience he had with Paul Craig. I'll stand by that. Now, Jamahal is saying, yeah, watch this interview. He'll fight anybody. Next man up. Bring me anybody. Give me a name. I don't care what the name. Just get me in there. I don't want to wait. And I believe him. I've heard those same things countless times over the years. I'll hear that same thing said by somebody else in the next 3 weeks. Not maybe, for sure. It's a dull and boring line. It's different coming from him. It's different coming from the world champion, who to get to the world championship took out a guy who's 2 degrees of separation from taking about every guy to ever do it at light heavyweight, right? I mean, you go think about that. You're 2 degrees of separation with Glover Teixeira away from every meaningful light heavyweight in history. And Hill didn't have all that hard of a time. And he didn't have a lot of time to prepare. And he didn't know he was going to a 5-round fight, and he went into enemy territory to do it. I mean, not for nothing, there was a few things against Hill that night, and he still really looked like something special. Now, I don't think he wants to wait, right? The most beautiful thing you could ever hope for. When you get into fighting and you think about from a career standpoint, right? I'm talking about the intrinsic value. I'm not talking about what that hardware and what those rankings and what some of those clippings mean. I'm talking about if you have the dream from a financial standpoint, that I can put everything on hold to really focus on this. And by the way, I'm not going to need this big, beautiful resume a few years from now, because this is going to take me the rest of the way. But to have that dream, if you understand the business, you must have a participation in the pay-per-view, and you must meet your thresholds. It's the only way. Anyone that you've ever heard of that's retired from the sport, Ronda Rousey, George St. Pierre, right, Conor McGregor, maybe not the retired thing, but you get my point. Everybody. Chuck Liddell, Brock Lesnar, Randy Couture, I mean, I could go on. Khabib Nurmagomedov, anybody who's ever been able to retire from the sport and actually have a retirement got to participate in pay-per-view. It's an important detail that you understand, because Jamal's never been in that spot. This next one will be his fight. He has not had his $1 million fight yet. If you think he's $1 million because he won that, you're not understanding. He's got to go out there and defend it. Now, he doesn't have to win the defense, by the way. He's just got to go out there and defend it, and it really is life-changing. Leon just went through this. The night the head kick was heard around the world, he became champion of the world. He became a star. He did not become, from a financial standpoint, what he wanted. And he went out there and defended it, his case successfully, which means he will get to do it again at least one more time. That's your life-changing moment. So when Jamal comes out and he's talking about, give me anybody, next man up, I'm tired of waiting, I really believe him, but I also feel like we should listen to him. That doesn't seem like an irregular or unreasonable request. And if you do something, you're going to want something back. It doesn't need to be discussed. You guys hear all the time, quid pro pro, that's a terrible thing. If you're working with someone that doesn't have quid pro pro, don't work with that guy. You don't have to have the conversations. I do, you do. It's back and forth, right? But it's very relevant, because look at what Jamal did. He was supposed to fight Lionheart. Now, it was a promotion. He was lower on the card. He went to main event. Lionheart, arguably #1 contenders match. Right into the world title fight. I mean, I do get where it was an upgrade, but it put a lot of stress on him. It broke up the fight that he thought he had. Put him with what the rankings would say was a much more difficult fight that he wasn't prepared for, in 5 rounds in a high-pressure situation, as opposed to 3 rounds in a lower placement on the card. Jamal did some stuff. He did. You bet. And he did it really well, and he did it really successfully. And if all he's asking for back is for a match, that's reasonable. We all agree, right? But he said, I'm tired of waiting on Procházka. He said, I don't know what's going on with Procházka, but I'm tired of waiting on him. I don't have any guarantee. I don't even have a rough date. We're waiting on him. Is he's hurt? He's not hurt. That was the most interesting part of the interview. Where did that come from? I haven't heard about Procházka from anybody in a position that matters in a meaningful period of time. I hear myself guessing, putting out hypotheses with Procházka, but I didn't have anybody that matters. And this is the champion of the division, who, when Procházka returns, he will return against the champion of the division, saying, I'm tired of waiting on Procházka. You're tired of waiting on Procházka? Time out. We've never been told as a community that you and Procházka are getting matched up. Now, we started to kind of look at the field, and we started to guess that. Ankalaev was a name that mattered at one point. All of a sudden, he's gone. Alex Pierre is a name that didn't matter at all, at least within that division. Now, he's going to take on Jon. And Jon is great. He's a lot older than you guys think, just so you know. Like, there is no promoter on earth that's in a hurry to get Jon back into a title fight. It's just a tough part of his career. Going to have to do it the hard way, but he's in a division where guys have done it the hard way, i.e. Glover Teixeira. So I'm just sharing with you, like, there does appear to be some moving parts, but nobody's actually told us that Procházka is coming back, that Procházka is close to return, and that Procházka can go in there against Jamal. And I have a lot of questions as it pertains to Procházka. Procházka is a clean athlete. I want to start with that. When you start speculating about guys' usage, you start speculating against USADA, people don't listen to your whole thing. He's a clean athlete. And you guys know my ability to look at somebody and know he's a clean athlete. What's going on there? USADA does not think he's a clean athlete. They tested him 22 times in 27 days. And don't correct me on my numbers. It could have been 25 times in 29 days. You get my point. It is the most any of us have ever heard. The most of any of us have ever heard up until that point is USADA coming back-to-back days. For an athlete, they'll come on Tuesday, but then they'll show up on Wednesday again. We've never ever even heard about USADA. Then coming back on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We've never heard of it. So they think he's dirty. They think they're going to get him. All of a sudden, he's gone. And it wasn't a matter of we're going to do an interim championship. They stripped the belt off of him. They took it back. This belt that you're seeing that Jamal's got, that's the real title. I mean, that's the undisputed title. I'm just letting you know. And there has always been a real push and pull in our community that Procházka relinquished the belt as opposed to them taking the belt. I don't really know what you're doing there, because I'm not doing anything other than telling you what happened. You're telling me some rumor, you're telling me something you heard. I'm telling you what happened. But it's relevant that you know what happened. Why? Well, if they took the belt off of him, that would tell us, at least to guess, that he's done. In fact, they came out and said it was the worst shoulder injury they had ever seen, but they didn't wait any time. It's 1 week after this injury, they pulled the belt off of him. Well, if you pull a belt off a guy, which shows you don't think he's going to come back because you didn't interim it. If you didn't think he was coming back, then did he fall into the category of retired? And that would be a very interesting thing to know. Right? There's many a slip between a cup and a lip. All he has to do is use that word one time and he's removed from the pool. Or they removed him from the pool because they said they dropped it. You just took his belt away. Why would you not release him? Right? I never heard that this happened. I'm not sharing for you it did. I'm asking you a question because we've got the champion of the world in Jamahal Hill that doesn't know what's going on with Procházka. You got Procházka wanting to play nice with somebody. Nobody goes down like this and doesn't raise a fuss. It doesn't matter what a good sport or a samurai you are. You take a guy's belt, his livelihood, you take his identity, he comes back with a fight, unless there's somebody he doesn't want to piss off. Unless there's a real good reason to go bury your head in the sand. You're getting this from a guy who's buried his head in the sand. You got to know the time to do it. So if he was removed from the pool, which if they took his belt, why would you not? Why would you not remove him from the pool, particularly if he's getting tested 22 times in 27 days? There's something going on. Now, I can tell you right now, Procházka's not using. But not using and not suspected of, it's a different thing. And it's very relevant because if he left just to not have to deal with the headache, how would you like to be 22 times? You got to let him know where you are nonstop. Oh, and by the way, you're out. They took your belt, your strip. I'm sharing for you because this would help us to guess what is going on with Procházka. If he was removed from the pool, even for a day, just so you understand, he would then fall into the exact same clause that Conor McGregor falls into. And though that clause is heavily debatable, it would at least answer some of the questions. So if we don't know anything about Procházka, we can't seem to get a hold of Procházka, his managers, his trainers, his mother herself doesn't want to come and speak, what do we do? Who can we ask these questions of? And I believe that there's a database. I believe there's a pool. I've heard people reference it before. And the first thing that you need to check is if Procházka's in the pool. If you can gather that information, do one further step of research and see if Procházka, from the time that he was stripped until present, ever left the pool.